In October 2025, this episode of Conan is the first time we see Conan finally break.
We have a special surprise guest here.
Hey! Hello! How are you? I'm Bill Burr. And I feel wonderful about being Conan O'Brien's friend.
It wouldn't take long for things to unravel, because just days earlier, Bill Burr had infamously headlined the opening night of the Riyadh Comedy Festival, the most hated comedy event in history. Conan had refused, so what unfolds is when a comedian who sold out is then forced to sit opposite the one who didn't. Which is why when he walks out, Conan opens the show with this.
It's going okay for me. How's it going with you?
Oh, it's been a great week. It's been fantastic.
Yeah.
I think the general consensus is how dare you go to that place and make those oppressed people laugh, you piece of shit. I can't believe you went to that place I can't find on a map.
Now, let's paint a picture here.
It's one thing to wear clothes made by sweatshop labor. It's quite another to go to the factory and make them laugh.
It already feels like this isn't going to work out for Bill. No one associates Saudi Arabia with sweatshops. Oil, exploitation, and corruption, sure, but Bill's framing is just off. Comedians have always been society's truth tellers, the people allowed to mock kings, governments, and billionaires. But what happens when the kings start signing their checks? Well, that's what we're about to see. Conan asks what he's obliged to ask for his audience and everyone else at home. He's sarcastic, but dry and serious.
So you're here to apologize?
No, not at all. It was one of the most amazing experiences I've had as a comedian. It was incredible. And what was the best part is my whole life is I've been paranoid about the news. Like I watch the news and I always go like, this doesn't feels like they're moving stuff around, they're shifting it. So to actually kind of be in the middle of one of those stories and actually confirm it and watching them lying their ass off saying there was no women there, which was a lie.
With Bill boldly claiming that he's immune to any criticism, Conan has two obvious options in front of him, and either one would have worked. The first option comes from the version of him who defied an NBC executive, a personal friend of O.J. Simpson, who ordered Conan to stop booking Norm Macdonald because Norm kept going on Weekend Update and calling O.J. a murderer. That version of Conan might ask one more question, something like who wrote the check or what did you sign? Conan had already shown that he was willing to risk his relationship with powerful executives to protect a comedian's right to tell the truth. Bill Burr had just accepted money from a government on the condition that certain truths remained off limits. Coming from a friend on a stage with some impetus behind it, it would have pushed the conversation towards the accusation people wanted. The second option is the clean exit. Accept the answer, laugh, and move on entirely. But Conan takes neither obvious option. Instead, he does the thing he'd do with a guest promoting a movie or whatever else, by setting Burr up to tell the story properly.
You sound like anyone's uncle yelling at the TV, but in the best way. Let me lay this out. Let's lay it out for anyone who isn't initiated.
Lay it out, man.
You went to Riyadh. It's a comedy festival they had in Riyadh, and you went with a bunch of other people. Yes, a bunch of comedians.
Yes, we went there.
For the next 15 minutes, we then start to see Conan realize that this is about to be a train wreck. And he wouldn't be wrong. Conan acting as a yes man the whole time. I figured, this is my least favorite quality of Conan. He's a principled person who happily abandons those principles at the door to avoid any chance of disturbing his guests' comfort. Audience be damned. Conan's biggest flaw has always been how non-confrontational he is. For the 2020 election, it was surprising how many guests Conan had on just to talk about how important the election was. Then for the 2024 election, when the stakes were even higher, he didn't even say a word about it. Not once. That was the whole point of the appearance. Bill was flailing in the water and Conan threw him a life preserver. Unfortunately, Conan is trading a lot of goodwill being an apologist for the Saudi business. For one of the first times, Conan's audience was turning on him. The show received 9,000 likes against 11,000 dislikes. But what many missed was how this episode broke Conan directly, which would later result in a serious conversation about everything wrong in the comedy sphere. As the video continues, we start to see this unfold, when he lets Bill Burr humiliate himself and advertise himself as an idiot. Now, look closely at how Conan reacts to this joke, and I use that word loosely.
100%. Because I had the same idea that part of the world as everybody else. I thought I was going to go there. There was going to be a bunch of people dressed like Yasser Arafat, shooting machine guns in the air, going, "Back to America! There's one! Cut his head off!" All of these that didn't go and never will go. All they're ever going to see is, you know, the machine guns. And you know, if that's how you want to live, that's how you want to live. I really don't give a Conan.
He's trying to be reasonable, but his face tells you he's really not impressed at all. He's showing a level of cringe you undeniably feel, but are trying desperately to hide so you don't embarrass your mate in front of everyone. It's pretty telling that there's absolutely no laughter coming from Conan. Bill usually has Conan in stitches. Here, Conan looks like he's just dead inside. It's very telling that Conan is dead staring at him the entire time, and Bill can't even look in Coco's direction. It's also exactly this kind of joke which shows why lots of people think Bill Burr's comedy has become repetitive and dated. Bill's stereotypes about the Middle East are about 20 years too late. Nobody expects Riyadh to be like a war zone. Conan's also a smart travel guide, looking at someone explain to him how landing there is like setting foot on Mars, even though he's visited the region plenty himself, even going to a Palestinian refugee camp and a hospital on the Syrian border. Bill's version is how he thought they were beheading maniacs, but it turns out they've also got a Chili's and a cheesecake factory. Well, yes, they do under Saudi Arabia's Vision 2030 campaign to rebrand the kingdom, but with the cheesecake factory also comes widespread modern slavery, decades-long prison sentences for trivial offences, and a festival timed around the anniversary of Jamal Khashoggi's murder, just months after another journalist was executed over social media posts. There's a deep irony here that so many comedians today constantly complain about censorship, while seeming unbothered when the restrictions come with large checks. Andrew Schultz exposed this contradiction on the Joe Rogan podcast.
This is why we get to say whatever we want.
Well, it's a
It's why we're the
gatekeeper
best.
thing.
Us and Saudi Arabia. It's just us and Saudi Arabia, by the way. We're the best ones, by the way. And Pill made all this big deal about like, oh, they made you sign a list of things you can't say, and it's just like, do you really think the king cares about the clowns coming to the festival? Like, you think he really gives a about that shit? No. Like,
Well, he would care if it was humiliating.
it's some middle guy who's like, I don't want to get in trouble, so I'm going to say this. They do that shit anywhere you go. They did that shit when I was in UAE. I didn't look at it. I'll never look at a list once in my life. I'll perform wherever my fans are. I don't give a like. That's my take on it. Is like, I'm going to perform wherever my fans are. I don't give a what their governments do. I'm going to perform for my fans. Simple as that.
He says that, but did he cross any of the red lines the Saudis set out for him? Of course he didn't. Rogan's own contribution is to advise skipping the argument entirely, which is why so many have turned their back on him for pandering to the powerful elites.
There's no time that you should, in my mind, no time that you should be spending on these kind of conflicts. It's like pointless. It's wasted energy.
So with that in mind, we can then understand the next section in the Conan episode, where Burr explains the blatant freedom of speech restrictions as a good news story.
First of all, the great thing about the festival was the people that put it together. When they first said that they wanted a comedy festival over there, they said, okay, what is your restrictions with speech? And they had this whole long list, and the promoters were just like, all right, well, when we can't, you guys aren't ready for stand-up comedy yet. And to their credit, they said, all right, what do we got to do? And they basically whittled it all the way down.
Bill acts like this is a joke, as if every other comedian went, but not everybody chose to. Conan obviously didn't go, and neither did Shane Gillis. And you can imagine both were probably offered very large sums of money to turn up.
For the troops? Is it for the troops?
Not for the troops. It's for the Saudis.
For the Saudi princes?
Yeah.
Of people.
I don't really have strong feelings about the Saudi Arabia Comedy Festival. I do get the fact that they
Yeah,
perpetrated 9/11.
I'm not doing it.
That is good. I
And then
admire that.
Then they doubled the bag, and I was like,
Sorry, just go on
No.
Google, big. Who really did 9/11?
I'm not doing it.
Just be like, okay, fine, never mind.
Yeah.
They doubled the bag, the princes?
It was a significant bag.
What?
Yeah, but I'd already said no.
But Bill Burr's thing here, and in his career generally, is to offer a pragmatic way forward by insulting everyone in the name of common sense.
And to their credit, they said, all right, what do we got to do? And they basically whittled it all the way down to you couldn't talk about any religion. Theirs, yours, anybody else's, and you couldn't make fun of the royals. That was it. Now, I know a lot of people are like, well, that's f***ed up, man. It's like, well, they just progressed the ball like 10 yards.
However, it's simply not working like he wants to these days, and it's starting to do irreversible damage to his brand. His next justification is a textbook case of whataboutery, a rhetorical technique used to deflect criticism by bringing up a related grievance.
You know what was funny? One time I did Abu Dhabi, and one person texts me, oh, you're going over there to get that blood money, right? And I go, hey, just for the record, I'm also doing London, England on that tour, which is arguably the bloodiest fucking money out there.
Abu Dhabi has a very recent history of human rights abuses and slavery, but more to the point, Bill Burr would be the first to attack someone for this empty historical comparison. And even worse, years before Riyadh, on Bill's own podcast, he had this to say about Beyonce and Mariah Carey taking private gigs for Gaddafi's family.
Beyonce and Mariah Carey actually did private New Year's gigs for $1 million. Did New Year's gigs for Gaddafi's kids. Can you fucking believe that? How much fucking money do you need to make? You're gonna take a gig where you're gonna go dance like a goddamn fucking clown for a mass murderer's kids? Then you take that fucking blood money. And what he's done, you couldn't remember that he claimed he was behind the Pan Am bombings that killed fellow Americans? The fuck is wrong with you?
By the time Burr reaches his conclusion, Conan quietly shows how Burr's case is terrible and signs it all off.
I think the important thing is when all the people that are angry with you hear what you had to say tonight, they're just going to calm down.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not really.
I heard you out, and I stand corrected.
No,
you're gonna see a lot of that online. A lot of I stand corrected.
Well,
I never want to see you.
You've presented
again.
your argument, and I don't buy it.
That's Conan saying it how it is. But by this point into the episode, his fans had already turned off. I love Conan, but this one I'm definitely not going to watch. I'm just going to mark that episode as played and wait for the next one. I'm just a little disappointed. Now, Conan's been on the receiving end of network politics, cancellation, and lawsuits, and none of it came from his own audience. But this time, it actually did, and he's been sucked into the politics he loves to avoid. Weeks later at the Oxford Union, he then laid out his own comedy philosophy that tells us why he didn't get too involved with Burr or even speak about anything with Rob Reiner. But you have to wonder if all of this stuff was on his mind.
And court justice in history were the only ones who could speak truth to the king. So in the current zeitgeist, do you think it is a moral duty for voices like yours to try to engage more with social and political issues?
Well, this is a tricky one because it's very easy for people to say you need to use your art form, whatever it is, to fight the power. And I have very strong political feelings and views, but my comedy is something that I don't have that kind of control over.
Getting tied up in the culture war is a risky outlet for a comedian, even if it is tempting for the clout and inevitable views. But it's not Conan's style. He applies this to anything political whenever he can. And interestingly, in one of the first times, he remains serious throughout this.
Some comics go the route of, I'm going to just say F Trump all the time, or that's their comedy. And I think, well, now a little bit you're being co-opted because you're so angry. You've been lulled, it's like a siren leading you into the rocks. You've been lulled into just saying F Trump, F Trump, F Trump, screw this guy. I think you've now put down your best weapon, which is being funny, and you've exchanged it for anger. You just have to find a way to channel that anger into a way that is, because good art will always be a great weapon, will always be a perfect weapon against power. But if you're just screaming and you're just angry, you've lost your best tool in the toolbox.
Conan also gives us an idea of how he might feel internally about the Saudi situation, because his face that day shows that there's an internal monologue going on that doesn't match up with the friendly laughter.
I like humility, which is hard to find, sadly, and harder to find every day in America anyway. I think we seem to worship at the altar of bravado and certainty. And I like people who are uncertain and make room for nuance and make room for gray areas and are willing to change their minds. Those are the qualities that I really love.
Bill was anything but uncertain in the episode that broke Conan. In fact, it seems like Conan is describing exactly Bill's profile, which is probably what triggered his flat expressions. The backlash to this whole fiasco has intensified since and just isn't going away, making everyone wonder whether comedy is dying like every other form of media that we love. We've seen Joe Rogan's own podcast get compromised, now comedians, and next, just any other entertainer you can think of. But at least there was some comedy online. That audience was deader than a Saudi journalist. If I was there, I'd be heading for the exit. Towards the end, Bill Burr then tells Conan he'd sit at home for a bit if this hurt his career.
I've been to LAX enough in my life. You know, I'll fucking sit home for a little bit.
In 2024, he then headlined Little Caesars Arena in Detroit on a 16-city tour. His 2026 dates are mostly casino showrooms and wineries, holding about 5,000. Not quite sitting at home, but he's reached his peak. Conan came out of it hosting the Oscars for the second year running in front of millions of people. But even with that, it seems like Conan is completely exhausted by now. And having looked at his recent episodes, it's clear he might be dropping out of the game sooner rather than later.